Okay, so this is one of those things I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is to show how I set up Maya. Opening up Maya 2015 with no preferences from previous versions of Maya. When you do open it, you have a previous version of Maya installed, and it asks you whether to copy your preferences or create new preferences. I always create new, only because sometimes I found those preferences will interfere with new options. Options change, as well as those preferences will screw things up. I have no idea why, but I've seen a lot of weirdness with it, so just to be safe, I always start fresh and clean. When you open up Maya, you get this nice little what's new highlight settings window, which you never want to see again. But I do like having the highlight what's new in green. I sometimes add it to some of my scripts. I like that. So I'm going to turn that off because I never want to see it again, but I know it's there. Also, the startup movies, if you've never ever used Maya before, definitely check through them. But realistically, you don't need to see them every single time you start Maya, so I'm turning that off. The first thing I change is the mouse scroll wheel, only because you use the middle mouse button a lot in Maya. And I hate when I accidentally move that camera. It's sort of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to go to my preferences under, where is it, Window, Settings Preferences, Preferences, and at the very top here under Interface, I'm going to open this up. I have mouse scroll wheel, I'm going to turn that off, and multi-touch gestures, I'm going to turn that off as well. And that'll get rid of that mouse scroll wheel issue that we were having. The next thing I'm going to look at is under UI elements. Under when saving and when opening, I turn both those off, the save layouts. Basically what that does is save your layouts of your file. So if the hypershade open, the graph editor open, it'll remember that and reopen them. Sometimes this can be a pain on if you have multiple screens, you reopen it, they'll be off screen, you can't see it sometimes. But more importantly, if you're working in the studio, somebody might have had that file open before and they have like the hypershade open. So you go to open it, takes forever to load because it's loading all the hypershade shader balls and things like that and textures. I can open up my own windows that I want to work with, so I don't need to have it saved in there. It's just kind of easier. I also turn off this reset viewport panel settings, because if I do have things set, you know, say to legacy over here and viewport 2.0 over here, I'd like to keep it that way when I reopen it. Next thing is the view cube. Now, I'm not a big fan of the view cube, but you'll notice that it's not showing up in this panel here, and this is because the renderer is viewport 2.0. Oops, I just hit something by mistake. For some reason, there's a little bug that doesn't show up in there, so if you do want it, that's why you're not seeing it. If you don't want it, like me, I just turn it off. Okay. Under the help, there's the in-view messages, which are actually kind of handy, but also kind of intrusive. Most of the time, I just see that thing popping all the time. I'm like, I don't need to see it. I can just look up here or whatever. If I have an object, I'll know. So I turn that off and the status information message. You still get the hover over, which is really great. So I leave that off. I'll save that. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is clean up some of these menus. I'm a huge user of the hotbox. What I usually do is turn my transparency to 0 so it shows up just a little bit better. And then I'm going to get rid of some of these extra menus. So using Shift-M will get rid of the panel menus. You know, so I get a lot of extra space. These menus are actually the same thing as these menus here. So that'll get rid of that. Control-M will get rid of the menu at the top bar. If you're using the hotbox all the time, I definitely say get rid of that. I get rid of it. It's this menu up here and all the ones below. So if you're using hotbox, you don't need it. And then Control-Shift-M, which will get rid of those toolbars, I think they call them. Really, I don't use any of that. I just find it takes up a lot of space. But now that they have color management, it's nice to know that using Control-Shift-M will bring it back so that you can go in here and adjust your settings. But for the most part, I keep it off. The other thing I'm going to do is change my background color. I kind of like this light gray. I just use Alt-B to change between them to set that up. So now I've already got a little bit cleaner. I'm not a big fan of the toolbox, basically because this is, you know, QWERT, and these are panel menus, which I almost never ever use that. So under the hotbox to the right, I'm going to go to toolbox and shut that off. Looks like I already turned off my time slider by mistake there. Generally, I keep that open. And I do get rid of the help line. I usually don't use that either. But I do keep the range, I do keep the time slider, and the mel and the output. If you're not using any mel whatsoever, maybe you don't need this. But I do like to have this open because it gives you error messages A lot of times people are, they're using a tool, it's not working, and they're like, I don't understand. You open that up, try to use the tool, it turns red. It's a big warning of why it's not working. Incidentally, if you use Control Spacebar, sorry. Again, I rarely use this. I probably should, but I almost never do. I think they call this like expert mode or something like that. But it's kind of nice because it toggles between your old settings, your full view, and just the main view. So if you're doing some modeling stuff and you're doing all marking menus, it's nice not to have any of that stuff there, and you bring it back using Control Spacebar. Sorry. So there are a few hotkeys that have just become standard for me, and I'll just show you what those are and why I use them. To set up your hotkeys, you just go to Window, Settings, Preferences, Hotkey Editor. And the first thing I'm going to do is Alt-O, which right now is set up to nothing. I know it's under Windows, Outliner. And what I like to do is just have something quick to open up my Outliner. So I'm going to set that to Alt-O, assign to nothing, which is nice, and assign it. And that just opens up my Outliner. I find that I have the Outliner open almost all the time, but if I want to get it real quick, also it's just nice to have it right there. But for the most part, I have it open all the time. The next thing I set up is the Tool Property window, which is also in Window. And this is that window that opens up when you double-click on an icon. I set that to Alt-P. It's in the same sort of area. It's also assigned to nothing, which is kind of nice, which is why I set that up. So no matter what tool you're in, it changes to match, which is nice. So if you have like the skeleton tool, it gives you the skeleton tool options. Move tool, rotate, scale, it's all right there, which is really nice. The next thing I'm going to do, and actually I'm going to cheat a little here. I loaded up a few things that I do. Control S. Okay, that's one that it's specific to me, but I really do think it's a good thing. I take it off of Save Scene, and the reason for that is I don't ever like to overwrite my Maya file unless I'm being very specific about doing it. I almost always incrementally save. I've just seen too many times where people save. It happened to me all the time. And the file gets corrupted, and I didn't know it, and I save, and the next thing I know, all of a sudden, nothing works. And it's nice that you could just go back into your incremental saves and get what you want. There is an incremental save in Maya. I actually don't use it. I have my own. But I always set the Control S to save scene as, just so I don't accidentally overwrite my file. This drives some people crazy, but I actually like having it that way. Okay. Alt-A. Now, Alt-A by default is set up to your attribute editor. And the only reason I changed this, let me just open it up here. Whoops, sorry, Control-A. There it is. The only reason I changed this is because your attribute editor can fall behind other windows. So I have my node editor open here. And let's create like a Lambert. It's always a Lambert. I'm like, cool, here's my Lambert shader. Hit Control-A to take a look at it. And you notice nothing. I'm like, wait, why isn't it opening? It actually is already open. It just doesn't bring it forward. So if you have it and it falls behind, it's not going to come forward. But you can easily pop it forward using a real simple command, which I'm going to get. But what I do is I always make my own hotkey for it. So what I'm going to do is go in here and create a new hotkey under User. I'm going to call it Attribute Editor Pop. Brings AE forward. The command that I want to use is Attribute Editor, which is kind of funny because you think, well, why isn't it set to that normally? When I set that up now, if I hit Control-A, it's going to actually pop it forward, which is really nice. Also, if it's not open, of course, it'll reopen it for you. I just forgot to set it. Control-A. There we go. Save that. Okay. Control-A. Now it pops it forward. So even though it's already open, I'm going to grab that Lambert. You can see that my attribute editor is hiding underneath there. Control-A is going to bring it forward. If I have it embedded, it'll still work just as it normally did before. Granted, I tend to use it torn off. Not sure why. I just do. But if you do have it torn off and you find you keep losing it, because it keeps falling behind your script editor, or your node editor, you just bring it forward with that. Okay, so what else am I going to look at here? Okay, so let's look at alt tilde and tilde. So your status line up here, for some reason they're hiding it now when you open up Maya. This little thing is actually super handy, and it's just a quick way to add transformations, relative or absolute, rename, and also select by name. But the old hotkey up until like Maya 4 was alt tilde would take you up there. So let me create a couple objects. And before I create an object, this is another thing I changed, which is interactive creation. Not a big fan of that. I guess it's from 3D Studio Max. But that's not why I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of it. What did I hit? Control S. Look at that. My mistake. Okay, so I've got a couple spheres here, and if I go up here to, like, say, relative, and I want them all to move up like 0.5, they're going to move up relative to their original positions, which is really nice. If I go to absolute, let's say 1, they're all going to move to 1. You can do some other interesting things, like obviously with scale works with it, so let's scale it all of them in by 4 and Z. It's just a quick way to change things. You can do it over in the channel boxes as well, but what I use it for a lot of times is just setting it to 0. Same thing with their pivots. If I want to move a pivot, I can type in 0, 0, 0. I'm going to put your pivot to 0. Also, it has a renaming function, which I use a lot. So I'm going to go over here and just call these ball. It does have some issues. If things are grouped, it always puts a number on it, which is good and bad. Also, it tends to sometimes get confused and add tons of numbers. There's ways to fool that. I can show you how to do that. Also, you have a select here. So if I go here and I say, you know what, I really want to select ball 2. I have no idea where. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Now I've got ball 2. Very happy. So what I like to do is have a hotkey that just kicks me up there really quickly. So I'm going to go to Window, Settings, Preferences, Hotkeys again. And I'm going to go into, I know that it's in Miscellaneous, and it's called Set Focused to Numeric Input Line. And I'm going to take that and set it to Alt tilde, only because I'm used to it. It's set to an old subdiv, which subdivs are no longer in Maya anyway. So I'm going to set that. You can set everything you want. I just find Alt tilde is natural for me. So what's cool about that, oops, did I set it? Yeah, it set it. So I can just hit Alt tilde. It takes me up to that. I have nothing selected, so nothing's going to happen. But if I select all these guys, go up there. Oops. Now they all jump to 0. Oh, sorry. I had caps lock on. And probably set to, there we go. There we go. So I can select these guys, go up there, and, oops, rotate. There we go. It'll jump them all to 0. You could do anything with it, but that's just a good example. The only thing about it is that if you're in rename or select, the hotkey doesn't work, and I don't know why that is. It broke quite a while ago, but it's still not working. But that's okay, because I've actually written a fix for it. So I only showed you that so you could see where it is by default. I can make this script available, so I'm going to create a new override for this. Set focus numeric. Sets focus to numeric input. And the script I wrote is called sm set focus to numeric. At least I hope it is. And right now I don't have that script in the script path, so I have to load that in. So I have my 2 folders open right now. This is where I'm kind of keeping my repository of scripts from my previous version of Maya, and this is my current version of Maya. So I'm going to go under Maya 2015 scripts, and I have this one in here called there it is, SM set focus input field. And I'll just dump that over here. It's actually pretty simple, but I'm going to grab this and go back to my Maya here, and oops, I got to edit it, put the correct one in. There we go. And what's nice about that is now that it's actually, oh, I forgot to rehash. It's not enough just to put the script in there. Once you're back in Maya, you also want to run rehash to load in the script. And what rehash does is it just checks your script path for any new scripts, and it loads those, sources those in. If you update a script, it doesn't know that, so rehash isn't that smart to do that sort of thing. It'll just look for new scripts. So now when I run this, it should take me up there, which it does. Let's select ball. Great. If I change this to, say, rename, go back up there. I can rename these guys. Oops, I dropped it. There we go. It's just a quick way to get up there and rename things. And it'll still work for absolute as well as for relative. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is set my tilde key or tick key to set focus to command line. Now I do a lot of mail scripting and Python scripting, and I run a lot of commands, and I just basically go in there and type them in. I like to go to that text field all the time, so I'm going to set this to tilde. By default, it's set to tweak. I've never been a big fan of tweak node. I haven't found a reason to use it all that much. You can also turn tweak on, relatively easily using the W marking menu, or I think it's an E. No, I guess it's just in W. So I don't know. I just don't use it that much, and also it's a legacy thing. Tilde or tick always took you down to that field, so I'm just going to assign it and override it. Yeah, thank you. So if I have a bunch of things selected, hit tilde, say size. I don't know. Just trying to think out the top of my head. I have 4 objects. Great. But any kind of script, I run a lot of scripts that aren't in default Maya, and I don't put them in a menu or anything like that, so I just keep it down there. I just want to be able to get down there, type some things in, and get out really quickly. Now the next thing I do is kind of advance that just a little bit. Go back down to user here, and what I'll do is I'll set it to set focus, and add the change as well. So what I'm going to do is set this up. I don't want to take you through the whole thing. And select. Great. Let me see if I threw that in my script editor. I may not have. Now it looks like I didn't put it in there. But basically the command I'll just do this. The command I'm looking for is just this right here. Set quick field mode. So I'm going to drop that in here. And so it says to select. And then I want to run that same command as before, which was the SM set focus input field. There we go. And what that's going to do is set it to select, and then set the focus up here. So I'm going to create 4 of those for each option. So set focus, rename, set focus, and rename. I'll drop that in, and I know the options on this guy. So rename, set focus rel, set focus and relative. Oops, that doesn't work. Come here. Now look at that. I actually have them sitting there. Back to Maya. I still have it select. I want this on rename. Oh, I think I got them backwards, didn't I? Yeah, let me edit this. Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, good. Next one is set focus absolute. That's this here. Add that in, and set focus rel. It's this guy here. Great. Did I screw that up? This is supposed to be rel. The nice thing is you only have to do this once. Great. And what I tend to do is set it to Alt1, Alt2, Alt3, Alt4. So focus to select was Alt1, which by default is assigned to nothing, which is kind of nice. Gone a little too fast there. Great. Yeah, thank you for the warning. Always warns you. All right, so what's cool about that is I'll hit Alt2. Now I can go back in here and rename. There we go. And let's put them all to 0, 0, 0, 0. Sweet. It's just handy. I like having it. I use it all the time. Okay, yeah. These I use a lot. X-ray panel and wireframe panel and X-ray selected. If you go to your panel views here, you have X-ray, which these guys are all on top of each other, so it's hard to see. And you have, I'll turn that off, and you have wireframe on shaded. Since I started using these, I stopped using the 4, 5, 6 buttons a lot. I tend to just toggle the wireframe unshaded and the X-ray a lot. I don't have a hotkey that exists in there, so I just make my own, basically. So I'm going to open this up again. Hotkey editor, once again, and go to new, and we're going to do wireframe on shaded panel. Wireframe on shaded. And it's a simple little script that I have tucked away. So I'll make this available. I just have it in my script editor here. Which one did I start with here? Wireframe on shaded. Okay. So I'm going to select this here and drop it in. There we go. Accept that. And I set that to Alt-W. I think at the time it was not assigned to anything. I rarely use human IK. If I use it a lot, I'll probably put it back. But in the meantime, I'm just going to override that. The next one I'm going to create is the X-ray panel. And that's this guy up here. Very simple script. And I set that to Alt-X. Now, by default, that is set to the walk context, so you can actually use the WASD to walk around in your scene. You can also get that from your view camera tools, the walk tool. It's not like I'm going to be slipping in and out of the walk tool all that often, but I do use the X-ray a lot, so I just override it with the Alt-X. I'm going to assign that and save that. It's going to warn me. Close this down, minimize that. So I can just quickly go through and just hotkeys these guys. And like I said, I use that constantly. I'm always flitting through them. I find it super, super handy. The other one that I add is the, cancel, is X-ray selected. And this is a script that goes in and actually will X-ray a selected object. It's on the object itself. It's a way you can set it, but it's a script which is called X-ray selected, and I'll make that available. And again, I have to dump it in to my scripts directory. I gotta make sure I'm in scripts here. There we go. X-ray selected. Drop it, drag and drop. Back in Maya, I'm going to rehash. Just arrow up until I get rehash. There we go. And I'll save that. It's going to warn me. And what's cool about that, I haven't set a hotkey yet. What's cool about that, and I set it to Alt-Shift-X, which by default is assigned to nothing. You can just X-ray individual objects. And it is, it's object specific. So, as you can see in all my views, that this object has been toggled from X-ray, whereas the X-ray and the wireframe unshaded is panel specific. So it comes in really handy though. There's just times I'm like, oh, I'd like to have this object X-ray for a minute. And there you go. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to look at is the duplicate. By default, and this is sort of a, I don't know, it's more of a pet peeve, if you will. Everything in Maya is name-based, and so you want to be really careful about how you name stuff. And I don't know what I'm hitting. You try and make everything have a unique name. But by default, using edit duplicate in Maya, which has no options, it won't rename the children. It's just the same thing as Control D. And that can actually run you into problems down the line with any sort of mel scripts and stuff like that that don't use the full path. It used to be that if you used select up here, I'd say ball, and it would balk at me and say, oh, you know what, you have more than one object named ball. Certain things can still get hindered by this. If I just do a regular old ls or select ball in my mel script area, it's going to say, oh, you know what, you have more than one object. So you want to be careful about having those names. So production-wise, I always make sure that I have this flag turned on, which I'll show you in duplicate special, which is called assign unique name to child node. Now this way, when I create a new group, it actually renames my child for me. It's a little bit of a hassle because then you end up with different names. So there's certain things that sometimes it's handy to have the children named the same, but you always want to make sure in the end that they're not. So by default, I always make sure that I change that. So that way, if there's ever a time I'm like, you know what, I want my children to have the same name, I'll use duplicate special because the options are there. The problem is that there's no options in duplicate, so you have to override that. So there's a script in the belly of Maya that comes with it called perform. Oops, I can spell here. Duplicate. I missed the R. There you go. And you'll notice it turned blue, which says, hey, it exists. And I'm going to type in what is, and basically what this is going to do is tell me where that script exists. Let's see, I did something. Oh, I still have echo all commands turned on, so let me turn that off. I'm going to run this and say, oh, it's a script found in others perform duplicate. So what I do, what is it? Control E, yeah. Programs, Autodesk Maya, scripts, others perform duplicate. Just find it. I think I'll do it this way. It's a little bit easier. Perform duplicate. There we go. And I'm going to save this into my local directory. I don't want to overwrite the one that's in the install version of Maya. If for whatever reason I screw it up, I want to make sure I can go back to that original. But I am going to go down here and change one of the settings. And that's this one here, which is the integer rename child. I'm going to set it to a 1. I'm going to do a save as on this. And I want to make sure that I put in, oh good, Maya 2015 scripts. That's exactly where I want it. Just in case we're going to do that. Good. Save it. Cool. And I also want to source it. So I'm going to drag and drop it into my Maya. Got no errors, which is good. And now if I can do a Control D, I should look at it, and there we go. I have ball 1 has been updated. Great. And now I know I'm not going to get duplicate names, and I'll be happy, and everything will work, and my references will work better, and my shader assignments will work slightly better. Now the other thing is you have this thing, oh, there we go, which is duplicate with transform. And I use this a lot, which is Shift D by default. And it's super handy. You can just grab a bunch of objects, duplicate them once, slide them over, do anything you want there, and then Shift D and make an array of them. Now the problem is that duplicate with transform has the exact same issue that our normal duplicate has, in that it doesn't have that rename children option on it. So I got to go ahead and change that too. This is a little bit different because there's actually a hotkey set up for it. So if I go under my hotkey editor again, and I'm just going to do, what is it, Shift D, and find it. There it goes, duplicate with transform. Here's my options, eval echo, duplicate dash smart transform. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to grab this and create a new one of my own in the user. And I'm going to say duplicate with trans override. Dupe with trans. Drop that in there. Now there's a command for the duplicate that'll actually, or a flag, sorry, that'll rename those children. So I'm going to do a help duplicate And what I'm looking for is this thing called rename children. So I'm going to highlight that, drop it in here, and accept that. And actually, I'm going to override. And I like to do overrides if you haven't noticed, just so that if I screw something up, it all still works. And I can go back without deleting my preferences and starting all over. So I'll do a Control D for the first one. Let's make it interesting. And a Shift D after that. And hopefully each of these will have a unique child node, which it does. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to look at is there's this script called Build Object Menu Items Now. It's a long, sort of stupid name. But what it is it's that right-click market menu you get when you click out in void space and not over an object. By default, it's set to Complete Tool and Select All. And I have a feeling they did this on purpose just to get people interested in Mel scripting and go find that script and change it to something more meaningful. So I, once upon a time, did that. And I know what it's called, and I know how to change it. And so I can do the same thing. I can do a what is on it. What was it called? There we go. There we go. And it's probably in that same directory. Scripts others build. Okay, good. I'm going to go right back here and say build object menu. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to override it locally so I don't screw up the original. So let me go up to the top of here, and I'm going to save this one first because I know it's a little more complicated than just changing a few lines of code here. Save that. And basically what this does is kind of cool. It's called a pop-up menu. And one of the things that's neat about it is if you look under your menu item here, it has directions for where the menu can be. So north, south, southwest, southwest, southeast. And that's just basically that array of where they're going to show up. This is a different market menu, obviously. So by default, you get Complete Tool and Select All. So I'm going to find those. Complete Tool. Whoops. Did I spell it wrong? From top. There we go. All right, let's try that again. Complete. No. There we are. Which is normally in the north position, and also the apparently if it's version 2014, that's just to make it green, is the Select All. So it's very rare that I use that Select All, and it's very rare that I use Complete Tool. So I'm going to change these guys. And this is one of those times where I've done it already, and I'm just going to grab the one that I created and drop it over. But I wanted to show you where it was. Hey, there we go. And it's build. There we go. I'm going to bring this over. And I'm going to overwrite it because it's one I've already done. Open that up. And this has some things that I've that are specific to my setup, but also things that everybody can use. So what you'll see is I have this minimize app I made to north, open scene I've made to east. This is a custom window. It's also a custom window. Save scene as I put to the west, new scene to northwest, custom window, minimize all windows, kill all windows. I use that a lot. Reopen. I'll have to show that too. Set project. And quit Maya. So I'm going to go ahead and save these. Go back here. I think I got to drag it in. I might have to restart Maya. I can't remember with this one. Let's see what it does. Oh, good, it worked. So what's cool about that is these are things that I use all the time. I'm constantly opening scenes. I'm constantly doing new scenes. It's just a really nice way to be like, oh, you know what? Give me a new scene. Great. Here's your new scene. Let me open an old scene. Great. Here's a Triceratops that I can open. Sweet. And a couple other things, like minimize the application. I end up using that all the time. Save scene as, obviously. Min all win and kill all win are some local scripts that I make to minimize all the open windows. Kill all win will kill all the open windows. Reopen is sort of a death cookie, and it just reopens your current scene irregardless of saving. And of course, set project, we use it all the time. And quit Maya, which I'm not going to do right now. once I put this in, I use it constantly. I really like it. I'll put up the updates for that as well. So now I'm going to show marking menus. The marking menus that I adjust are the ones in the hotbox. By default, you have left, middle, right mouse button in the north, south, east, and west areas. And this is another one of those things that I think maybe Autodesk did on purpose, or Maya did on purpose, to say, hey, some people are like, why do I have all three buttons are, it's a waste. I could use, a different button for each. That's what I do. And you have the center, of course. So to adjust your marking menu, you go to Settings, Preferences, Marking Menu Editor. And right now I don't have any loaded in from before. So if you've never had a marking menu before, what you want to do is create a marking menu, call it whatever you want, and it's really kind of easy. Just click in here and say Edit Marking Menu, and you can drag any command you want or whatever. Like I have this one here. You can drag it from your shelf, which is really handy. Now you have, oops, a label. What have I done? I guess I got rid of it by mistake. Oh, I didn't save it. I think actually I can just drag right to it. Yeah, look at that. Ooh, it even gets me an icons. Let's see if this works. Haven't done it this way in a long time. So if you test it, there you go. I'm just using the left mouse button. Save it. Cool. Now it'll show up in my marking menu editor. Now what's cool about it is you can set it to the hotbox, anywhere in the hotbox. So north, south, east, west, center, left, middle, right, depending on which button you use. You also can make it a hotkey to any hotkey you want. When you do this, it'll show up in your hotkey editor. But normally I do the hotbox. What I'm going to do real quick is delete this one. Yeah, I don't need to back it up. And close this, and close this. And I'm going to go to my prefs directory for 2015, and I have my marking menus from before. Marking menus from older versions generally don't seem to have any affect anything. It's more like preferences and things like that. So I have 5 that I generally use. I actually just thought of a few that I want to update. Now when I go back to my marking menu editor, it'll say, oh, there's new menus. Would you like to load them? Yes, I would. To bring those in, the ones I have up top here is called Quick Shelves. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to set these up, and then you'll get an idea of what they are. So I generally put this one in the hotbox in the left south area. You notice it steals it from the old hotbox south. Quick side shelves is a custom thing that I can show later. I put that in the south right. Quick tools, I put that into east left. Span left, I just couldn't think of a better name, is west left, and span north is north left. And once I apply that, it's all set and ready to go. So now when I use the right and middle, I still get the original marking menus for those. Oh, not that one, but the original marking menus for that area. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. But if I use the left mouse button, I get my marking menus that I've added. And there's a couple different things you'll notice. Like on this one here, I have my normal area, north, south, east and west, northeast, southeast, south, north, northwest, and southwest. And then I have extras underneath there. Those are just ones that didn't fit into these categories. You only get those spaces, and then these just get put below. So I'll show you what some of these are. Probably the easiest way is I'll just throw a little deformer on here. And this one's actually pretty cool. Let's make sure everything's turned on. I had it turned off. Okay, so by default, when you select a deformer or a joint, or anything that's affecting the components of an object, you'll always get that, and you're showing wireframe, you'll get that pink view on your objects. Sometimes it's unwanted. You don't really want to see that. So I kind of sometimes just flick that on and off because I'm checking my deformations. So over here on the left, I have what's called display prefs - display affected true and false. And that's actually just the meld command ripped right out of Maya. If it's true, it'll show up in that pink color, and if it's false, it won't. So sometimes it's kind of nice if you're working on something and you want to see exactly, you don't want to, well, obviously I can just hide the wireframe, but it's just nice that you know it's there, and, it's just a quick way for animators to hide that view, that colorized wireframe if they don't want it. In that same area, I have display full, display reduced, and display none. What this does is actually just gets rid of that wireframe view no matter what. So if I create it, let's go to 4 here, actually 5. So even if I select an object, I have this sphere selected, you notice in this panel view, it doesn't highlight like it normally would, and that's coming from that display. But it is nice to have full or none. When it's in none, I still have this object selected. It's a little bit confusing sometimes, especially if you're dealing with lots of objects. But sometimes animators like it, even though you just have to know, yes, I did indeed select that object. Most of the time, by default, it's turned on. If I go to, let's go to south here, this is something I use constantly. And you'll notice that in my shelf right now, I'm not showing the shelf tabs up top. And the reason for that is I find, it's a waste of space. And I learned about this thing called Shelf Next. It's just a simple little Mel script. What's also cool about it is you can set it to specific shelves. So I have down here, just south, takes me to my panel shelf, which just is a quick way for me. Oh, I haven't loaded that script. But it's just a quick way to get to this menu here with big old icons. I know that I could use that Control-Shift-M and bring back the panel menu. I don't see them in here. This is just a nice visual way, and since I use this so much, I don't really. It's actually faster, I think. Just hold the space bar, arrow down once, panel shelf. Hold the space bar, panel up. Mark menu up. I get my rigging shelf, which is a bunch of rigging tools that I use very often. But I also have some other custom shelves in there that I use, and it's a quick way to get to those specific shelves. Now you could also use. They have what's called Shelf First. So this is the very first shelf. I'm going to show my tabs so you can see this. And if I go Shelf Next, I'm just going to pop between my shelves. Oops, and I wasn't low enough. There we go. Now you're saying, well, I could just click on the things and I go right there. True, but if you you get a little extra space. I like it. Also, you can make it specific. To make it specific, I'll make this code available, of course. I'm going to go to my marking menu editor. Come here. Quick shelves. So if I go to my rigging shelf here and edit this, it's actually very, very easy. It's just shelf tab layout dash edit dash select tab, the name of the shelf, and then this global variable here, G shelf top level. That just means the shelf, basically. That's all you need to know. Along with that, I have on my right mouse button the shelf, quick shelf for side shelves. Now by default, I don't have it loaded. I gotta work on a bug that I have going on there. But I have a little shelf that I use a lot on the side here, which isn't going to show me its tabs at the moment. It's angry at me. But that's just a quick way for me to toggle between those guys. It's really specific to if you have a side shelf. If you don't have a side shelf, it's not going to really help you. Okay, so in the east area, I add a couple tools. Comment rename. I've mentioned this a few times before. If you don't use comment rename, you really should. It's a great renamer. Makes things really, really easy for you. If you have a bunch of objects, the search replace is phenomenal. You can name them. Okay, let me pull the outliner so you see it. Let's search for ball and replace it with cube. And it goes through and does that. It's great, and it's also case sensitive. So if I searched for, say, cube and replace it with ball on these objects, nothing's going to happen because it's an uppercase C. Great tool. I also, through the connection editor over here, I use the connection editor constantly. I also have my own custom multi-connect window, so I can connect one object to many. So if I want to do like the scales. I've never really released this because it has a couple bugs and it's a little bit wonky. Maybe I will one day. I don't know. I go through here and just, now I've just made direct connections with all these guys. So if I do scaling, they should all scale. What else do I have over here? The node editor, new in 2014 plus, I guess. Use it constantly, so it's just nice to have a quick way to get to it. I have my own rigging window with all sorts of random stuff in there. And the tool shelf, which is basically just a little floating shelf that I have of tools. So it's just a quick way to get these things. I will show you the node editor, though, because that's a good one that everybody should have quick access to. So what is that? That's east. Oops, wrong one. Node editor, there it is. So it's just node editor window. We'll open up a new editor, node editor for you. While I'm here, actually, in this marquee menu editor, there's a new thing here which I've taken out, which normally have something here which is called create new window. I find this, I hit this by accident all the time and ended up creating, new camera. It creates new cameras on me, so I've taken that out. If you go to your center, normally you have one up here that says create new window, or create new camera. I just went there and deleted it, basically, so I didn't have to keep creating windows by default. I don't have it loaded on this, but I also changed my bottom view to show render cam. Now, by default, we name all our cameras render cam. I can just set it to render cam, it'll automatically go to render cam, so I don't have to, it's very rare I use bottom view, so I changed it to that. Up north are most of my rigging tools that I use. Let me just draw a quick skeleton here. So we talked before about local rotation axis. If I hit select HI, that just selects my entire hierarchy. Let me show the outliner so you see this. Oops. There we go. And I have this toggle rotation, local rotation axis. I like to see my local rotation on my joints all the time. And I find that going into display, transform display, local rotation axis, I do it so often that I would probably break my fingers trying to do that all the time. The other thing you'll notice is I have one here for toggle the state off. And the reason for that is, if you have some of them on and some of them off in a big hierarchy, you can just go in here and say select the entire hierarchy, turn them all off. I don't have one to turn them all on because it's very rare I will do that. I'm usually pretty specific about it. And then you'll notice also when you're looking at rotation axis, if you haven't seen this before in Maya, that my last one doesn't line up with the rest of them. It's not a big deal. The only time it comes into play is if you're kind of playing with joints a little bit and you do a select and you go to like sometimes this guy will be like rotated 90 degrees from the rest of them. What I generally do is align it to the joint that's above it, and that's just a simple command which is joint-e-oj none, and it just quickly aligns it to itself. The other thing you'll see if you do say a mirror joints, let me just do a quick mirror, which should get it all screwed up. Yep, okay. Is you always want to be looking at the two things on your joints are the local rotation axis and also its local transform. So if you see I'm in object mode on my move tool, you see how it follows that X. If I go in here, whoops, and rotate these guys real quick, whoops, let me get them all. With a tool like this is CN spin access, I use this all the time. There we go. You'll notice that my local translate has remained the way it was before, and I have inverse translate X on my joint chain. It's not really good. If you're doing any sort of stretching or things like that, you really want to be careful of that. It'll kind of just wonk things out. So what I have here is this little script called joint-e-zso, which basically just realigns those translates for me and gives me the correct direction that I want. I also have just a basic, this is the orient XYZ. It's rare that I use that, but you'll see that it just orients it to XYZ. I also have toggle selection handles. This is something that I haven't seen a lot of people using for a while. I'm not really sure why. So let's put an IK handle on here or something like that just to make it interesting. Come here. There we go. So by default, you have your selection hierarchy, this little list up here. If I do a marquee select over everything, you'll notice you get certain things. So, oops, I got that By default, your IK handle is your number one in your list, the very top thing. If I don't have any IK handles, then your joints are their number one on the list. But there's these things called selection handles, and basically, it's this little plus sign here, and it's just a quick way to bump that guy up to the top of the list. So let me put my IK handle back in. And of course we have joints here. But if I do a marquee select over the joint and over my selection handle, I get the object. It's nice for controls and things like that. It's always sort of looking at camera, so it's always that plus sign. It's really handy, and definitely it's just a nice way to... You've probably seen blend shapes set up that they all have that set up on them when there's a group. What else is up here that I use? Oh, parent-r-shape. That's a big one. It's just a way to reparent shape nodes. So let me freeze this. And if I arrow down once to get the shape node of this object and then select my sphere here, if I run that parent-r-shape, what it does is actually puts the... I'm going to show shapes. It puts the that circle shape node underneath my sphere transform node. And so now if I go to select it, I get my sphere. A lot of times this is something you'll do for controls and things like that. You can do multiples underneath the same exact object. For rig controls and stuff like that, you can make creative curves. You can produce curves in like Illustrator and then bump over to Maya and then put them underneath things. That's how you do that. What else is up here? Access on and off. Yeah. Parent shapes is just a script I wrote. Okay, so I think that gets us through most of our marking menus. A couple other things added to 2015 are things like these plane handles, which actually I'm not a big fan of them. The only real issue that it can be is if you go in and sometimes if you're dealing with vertices and I go, oh, I want to select this vertex, I might accidentally grab that plane handle. I'm actually used to using the old method, which is to control click on the manipulator handles. So I turn that off, which is in the settings again. Go to manipulators, plane handles, just turn that off. The other thing you'll notice is that when I go back and forth between these objects, that it's remembering, oops, it didn't that time for some reason, there it goes, it's remembering my component selections. That's an option that you can turn on or turn off. I actually really like it, except for when you're doing any sort of rigging. I've just got a bound cylinder here. If you have selected vertices and you go into the component editor, for some reason that preserve selection will make the component editor lose its focus. So if I said normally you would select a joint and then adjust the weighting, it won't let me do that. But if I shut it off, it's under selection, preserve component selection, turn it off there. I can now go in there and change my weighting and stuff like that without having to have any issues. I guess it's just a bug. I just generally turn it off because it causes more problems than it fixes. Some other cool things that were added is one is using the middle mouse button on a menu. So what this does is it remembers the last action you did under a menu set. So if I go and create and click on the middle mouse button, I get a sphere because that was the last thing I did. With that selected, if I select middle mouse button on the create deformers, I actually get a lattice because that was the last thing I did over there. Similarly, if I select on skeleton, middle mouse button, I'll get the joint tool. Now granted, when you're in something like the joint tool, I can hit Y and go back to it again, or I can also hit G and get my last tool as well. But this is kind of cool because then basically what I can do is I can just rip through a bunch of things really quick and give myself a sphere, put a lattice on it. I found that I use this more and more as time goes on. I always forget it's there, but it's a good thing to have. Another update in 2015, and this is something that came over from the modeling toolkit, is the pivot tools. So ordinarily, when you go into insert, you would get your old pivot tools, but now the modeling toolkit pivot tools have been moved over, and these are kind of cool. If you select on any component, it'll move and orient the pivot to that selection. So a face, it'll go to the face. A point, it'll go to a point, or a curve, it'll go to a curve. If you hold down Shift, it'll only move the pivot and leave the orientation alone. If you hold down Control, it'll only do the orientation. And if you hold down Shift Control, it'll actually aim at whatever component you're going to. Now the other thing you'll notice is if I click off of the object, it centers the pivot. This is a good and bad thing. My jury's still out on whether I like it or not. The problem is I use insert a lot. So I'll insert to go in, insert to go into the tool, insert to go out of the tool. If you use that, you got to make sure you hit insert again to get out of the tool, because often I'll go, I'm going to select this object over here, and I've reset my pivot, and I got to undo and get out of it again. If you hold down D, it gives you the same functionality. So it's not so bad, because then you release D and you go back to whatever you were doing before, and you won't lose that pivot location. I do find it a little bit hard to hold down D and Shift or something like that. And what you just saw there was I did something where it got stuck on. Oh yeah, double click. Double click turns it on, double click turns it off. So I don't use D all that often, but I do use insert. You just gotta make sure you get in and out of it, or you'll accidentally reset your pivot. The pivot tool works the same way on components as it does on objects. I could hit insert, move my pivot, I could snap it just as I could, or just placement, or center it, aim it just the same way. Again, I have to be careful that if I try and select another object, that I didn't just screw up my pivot location. Undo does work. So I got to get out of that tool by hitting insert again, and then I'll go to my other, and then move its pivot, and then work with it from there. The one thing that you'll notice is when I select new components, it always centers that pivot around my selection. You can lock that pivot so that it doesn't do that. You used to have a small little widget, but they got rid of it. If I go to my tool settings, however, I have this thing here, which is on all the tools, which is pin component pivot. If I click that, it'll now pin that pivot and leave it there. So if I go and select a different component, even on a different object, that pivot doesn't move, which is really nice. The only thing that is a little bit weird about that is if I go out of component mode and then back into component mode, I've lost that position, so I've got to do it again. If it's a position I like, I'd probably want to put an object up there or something like that. And it looks like it's actually not holding. So it looks like I have to toggle it. So let me toggle it on, or off, and toggle it back on again. Oops. Okay, so now it's holding. So it looks like it might be a little bit of a bug. You might have to hit that button to toggle it on or toggle it off. Incidentally, there's just the mel scripts for that, or mel commands, are set TRS pin pivot false and true. You may want to take that and add it to a shelf or something like that. I'll log it as a bug, and hopefully maybe it'll be fixed in the next round. A minor but useful customization that I've added to Maya is to add the set menus to my outliner menu. What I use them for is creating sets and dealing with the objects that are in each set. Ordinarily, you can go to Create Sets, Quick Select Set, and once you create that, you can actually add things to it pretty easily by just dragging and dropping, but you can't drag and pull out from the outliner menu. For that, you want to go to the Relationship Editor, Set Editor, select your objects that you want to remove, select your set, and remove them. Rather than dealing with that menu, I just added a few things to this menu to make it easier for me. So what I'm going to do is grab all these guys and the set and add them to it, which is nice. I'll create a second set. Oops. Let's call it spheres, or spell it wrong, but it doesn't really matter. And I can do a couple things. So I can actually remove these guys easily. I can also nest my sets underneath each other. If I want to create a new set of these cubes, I can just do that. And let's add that underneath our all keyable. Oops, I have to use add set to set. There we go. And I'm going to remove these cubes from the all keyable. So the all keyable just becomes like a top group. And what's nice about that is that now I have just a quick way to be able to key all my objects if I want, or just key the cubes, or just key the spheres, or I can also do things like hide and show and things like that without having to go into any other menus. You do have select set members, which is also kind of nice in there too. Other than that, I have remove set from set, and that's pretty much it. All right, so I'm going to stop there because I've gone way too long, and this is very tedious and boring. Luckily, when you do this stuff, you only have to do it once. There's a couple other custom things that I do. You may notice that my status line has changed. I also do some stuff to the time slider, but I'll save that for another time. But in any case, I hope this will be helpful. If you fast forward through it, that's fine. If you have questions, comments, or whatever, just let me know. I'm better at answering questions than making stuff up to talk about. So if there's anything out there that you're curious about, just give me a shout, and maybe I'll do it. I don't know. I'm not even sure why I did this one.